Hello and welcome back to another episode of SLB Show. We are back. I've taken a week off because yours truly wasn't very well. The guys did send some messages checking in on me occasionally, not really. No, they did. But no, it's only Mitch and Louis. Well, if I say only, Matt sunning himself in the south of Spain, no, south of France. Having the greatest time alive visiting family, I believe. So I hope he's enjoying that. And maybe he might check us out and listen to the show on his way home. But yes, Mitch and Louis are here, and we are going over the Cup semi-finals, in which we now know who the two teams are for the next final in Manchester. It's going to be obviously Manchester versus London, but some good, decent basketball happened across the weekend with Surrey, two-legged fair against Manchester, and obviously London taking on Cheshire. Gents, how are we? We all good?
All good.
Very good, thank you, Grant.
Good. So let's get straight into it. Surrey versus Manchester over the 80 minutes. It was just Manchester just had a little bit too much for them, didn't they, Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, it was good over the two legs. They were both exciting games to watch. But I think for me, biggest takeaway from it was Surrey needed Ronald Polite. Him not being that first leg kind of could have been the difference maker, considering what he's been averaging for the year. You've got Keano Lilly playing 40 minutes, Tyrone Lawrence played 39.5 minutes. Like, they were giving everything they can to keep it close. And they did. I mean, first end of the game in Surrey, they're down by 14. We've seen bigger comebacks. It's not impossible to happen. And I mean, Surrey did basically the same thing last year, right? So you never knew what was going to happen with that. But Manchester just held the fort, did what was needed.
Do you want me to speak? I'll speak. Okay. So their backup PG was basically Max Coop. I love Max Coop. He's one of their Surrey's pathway guys. He was there from the start 2 seasons ago, Max Coop. But he's not in a position to really kind of affect the game. So that was a big issue from my perspective, because they were kind of really reliant on, well, obviously very reliant on Keano Lilly to perform. He got a lot of points, as Mitch will attest. But they didn't really generate a very consistent source of, well, just easy looks that kind of Ron Polite does, because Ron Polite's a very quick guard. He's very he really does pressure kind of the rim in the way he attacks. And with kind of Keano Lilly attacking as that lead guard, he's not really that type of guy. He's a tough shot maker. It's kind of like relying on Jalen Ray from last season. He's a tough shot maker, but he's not a lead guard that will, make the offense flow, for example. And Tyrone Lawrence, I was kind of pretty disappointed, to be honest, because I kind of thought in that first leg he would have stepped up a little bit more. I think he got a decent kind of stat line in that game, but he didn't really kind of affect the game that much, which kind of was a little bit, you kind of expect him to fill that gap. So there was a big guard issue, and that kind of resulted in the quality of shots, and thus their offense didn't really get going.
Is that then when, obviously, Polite missing his first game, but also then missing Michael Graham as well? Two kind of big starting five guys that all of a sudden Surrey only able to really go 7 deep with Max Coop playing obviously 5 minutes, but whereas for Manchester they were comfortably going 9 deep with Duke Shelton playing like the same amount of minutes as kind of Coop. Is that just a strength and depth thing? Is that obviously just having players available? It did, like, when I look at this, I go, okay, Surrey aren't a type of team that can maybe miss 1 or 2 guys and get away with it in a game like this when Manchester has so much strength and quality.
Yeah, I think that's part of the battle. I mean, with having Polite there, it's very much, the way I kind of see it is that Surrey needs Polite there to have that extra additional primary threat on the ball.
Yeah.
You look at who else they have around them. When he's not there, they can kind of, the other 2 guys can get targeted a lot more. Like Keano Lilly can get targeted, Tyler Lawrence can get targeted quite a lot. And not having Polite there as a third option to give you, like, okay, we need to be aware he's still here. We need to keep an eye. You're not worried as much about some of the guys off the bench for Surrey being that sort of impact, commanding presence in offense anyway. And you touched on it there. Manchester have a lot of firepower, and they just do body after body, and they've got the depth to kind of make up for it. Michael Graham would have been a massive impact, though, for sure. I mean, Hayden Ling has had a few impactful games the last couple of weeks, but yeah, it's tough when you're going up against the size that Manchester have at the 5 spot. It's tough.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, 'cause
that's
they're
a
not
big
even. Oh,
thing.
you go.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Go.
That's
No,
a
go.
big thing I feel because they obviously played a lot of Tim the Wankboy minutes at the 5. I like his defensive impact in terms of his length and mobility, but that kind of causes like a big hole offensively in the kind of the middle. You know, because he's not a guy that you're going to want to hit. You know, as a playmaker in a pick and roll, you're not going to want to hit him because he's going to struggle around the basket, especially against like a big like Matt Nicholson, for example. You know, so that's another element offensively that they were missing. You know, so that kind of compounds the issues where they didn't have obviously Polite. You know, so that's another issue. And then kind of Nedas, I feel like his shot from outside wasn't really firing. So that's another compounding issue where you had kind of obviously since Tyron Lawrence typically plays the 3, since he's forced into the starting lineup, you're having to play a lot more like Nedas at the 3 and kind of obviously Isaiah Small at the 4. Those are two kind of not very okay. So Nedas is more inconsistent as a shooter. Isaiah Small's shooting 30% for the season. So if you look at the 3-point percentage that I'm sure Mitch has got the FIBA Life stats of, they didn't shoot very well from deep. So basically Manchester, because they do have a lot of defensive bodies like Cole Carey, for example. You know, they could throw their defensive guys at kind of Keno Lilly and obviously Tyron Lawrence, kind of help off the other guys, you know, and just make things tough. And yeah, obviously if the shooters aren't shooting, you know, that just makes it very tough. So
Is that the type of thing when Surrey are missing bodies? You look at the second leg, the scoreline was much closer. Still no Michael Graham. You add in Polite's back in. Andrew Lawrence plays, obviously limited minutes. He gets ejected of 2 techs. But Manchester, when you look at their bench scoring, both games in the 40s, players like Zach Irvin, last season we saw how impactful Zach Irvin can be. He's actually someone that I think come the final will have a big say in the outcome or how close a matchup this will be. He seems to be that type of big game player. But when you're able to bring off the size and quality of Zach Irvin off the bench, it just to me it just shows Manchester's quality as the season grows on. They kind of getting into their roles. They obviously beat London the other week. But yeah, does that add to what you guys think as well in the game?
Yeah, definitely. So I think having that depth there helps. I think bringing, like you mentioned there, have Matt Nixon off the bench, or even Jordan Johnson, him coming off the bench is just, you're switching out one of your creative, aggressive guards for another creative, aggressive guard. It just means there's just another threat on the way. Kyle Carey's had a few good games. He had a decent performance in the matchups as well. Like, he didn't play that much in comparison to what you maybe expect sometimes, but he played 20 minutes he played 20 minutes in the second game. Like, he is giving you good minutes, so he's just contributing. And Zach Irvin's just does the little things, and that's going to be vital for the final.
See someone like a Kyle Carey.
Yeah.
He always seems to be a player you don't really see him feature early on in the season as coaches lean on their imports and try and get everyone working. But see when he's called upon, I always think around about this time of year, injuries and big game moments, Kyle Carey is so reliable. Do you need him to hit a 3-ball? Yeah. Do you need him to play face-up defense? He'll do it. Like, he's that player. And you may think through a 30, 40 game season, he's someone that people kind of forget about. But Kyle Carey does a job every team he's on. You nodded straight away, Louis, that one.
Yeah, because I said it on X. Like every season, Cole Carey around this time like gets more and more minutes. You know, because as you say, he's a very reliable kind of player, and defensively, he does like talking about the players that do the little things. Defensively, Cole Carey, like the past couple of seasons, he's been really active defensively, like as a point of attack defender. You know, like defending guards, you know, he's been really tough to kind of, just kind of contend with. So, yeah, I thought he played really well. And, he hit a couple threes. So, yeah.
Yeah, massively so.
When we look at this Manchester team further as well, like I keep looking at them and think they're now beginning at times. Okay, 2 weeks ago, we were going to talk about how on earth did they go from beating London to losing to the Gladiators. Let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? But we're now talking in that. It's amazing how in British basketball that time shift happens. They've just put away over two legs Surrey, who were probably the informed team this year, who we have been bigging up for a number of weeks. But when we look at Manchester, you've got Adi Tukasi, Kyle Carey, Kyle Cleary as well. That British connection is really beginning to step up for them, and especially over this weekend.
Yeah, it's grown that profile, I think, a bit more on a decent level as well. Like, they're doing well on the European level as well, and not just in the domestic game too. And having a strong domestic contingent just shows there's value in having that. And it's a good standard of player they brought in to really complement it.
Yeah, I love Tim Adetukasi. He's just such a good complementary player as like a 6'5", kind of like 240. He's listed at 240 pounds. He's huge, like kind of combo forward. You know, that just kind of does like the little things. I think they kind of recruited their British contingent really well. You know, because obviously Carl Carey, you know, Tim Adetukasi, Kane Henry is kind of this like wing trio or forward trio that kind of just really good role players that play defense, have versatility defensively, and just, you know, provide additional value other than like being big creators. And then obviously Kai Cleary is the big shot maker, so to speak. So
I guess crazy that we've obviously not seen a lot of Manchester as a full roster. Like, Cleary missed a lot of games there in the season. Henry's now been out for a number of months, or a month or so now. Like, it's really just see when they add him back in, we look at their strength and depth, and you compare it across to London, which we'll do later on. It's going to be fascinating for sure. But when we look at this cup final, Manchester getting both their men's and their women's team into the final. Women's final is going to be Manchester versus Sheffield. That game tonight. Hatters dismantling second half against the Gladiators once again. But Manchester is a city. Manchester is a club. Manchester, in terms of a journey of where they're at, this is a really important set of fixtures for them. Now, you look at, obviously, a newer team in the city. We see at times good crowds, really poor crowds, really kind of seem to have, you want them to have good momentum. They've got a good presence on social media to us basketball folk, and they've got a really good team on the floor. So what do you guys think this final, being in Manchester, can really do for the club?
I think it can be. I just think it could be very big. It's a big opportunity for them to capitalize on the casual audience. You know, just I do, as you say, I really like what they do in terms of kind of really building on that homegrown feel. Obviously, they've added Demi Babalola from Manchester Magic to their roster recently. Obviously, with the Manchester Pro-Am. I really do back their project and really hope it does kind of do well, because it'd be a massive boon to British basketball, you know, from my perspective. So, yeah, I think it'll be a big opportunity.
Is this one of these ones where you look at the statements, obviously when the NBA was in town, from Manchester being like, well, basically kind of almost throwing their name into the hat to be that kind of second city franchise within the NBA in the UK? And this could really help. And we've talked about a few times recently that importance of the potential importance of the NBA coming to town in terms of potential revenue growth for the league in Manchester as a city. If for example, it's Manchester, whatever else, it could really, really fire them into that. You see what they're doing it on multiple fronts this season. They've been doing okay in the league. ENBL, they're into the playoffs of that. And now they're into a cup final, which is in their city. Like, it's a really, like, Manchester's going to be front and centre here. It's going to also probably help boost ticket sales locally, because, let's go see Manchester in the final against Big Bad London as such. Like, there's this, like, you've got the two big UK cities going head to head. Like, I think Manchester have a really big chance, regardless of the result. The result, if they were to beat London, for an example, would be incredible. But if they were to do it properly, can really push them into that next rung in terms of you see their roster strength, you see their presence online, but in terms of becoming a big say in kind of the Manchester sporting fields. Like, Mitch, what do you think in that one?
I think you're 100% right. It's a massive profile boosting opportunity there. Like, realistically, you look at both men and women finals, they're probably going to be viewed as the underdogs for both, just based on who they're facing. You've got Sheffield, who have just won a bit of silverware already, who are one of the top contenders in the Women's League, and London, who are playing Euro Cup, sitting top in the Men's League. And they've just won a bit of silverware as well. Like, Manchester will come in both as the underdogs, but again, that local connection there, a chance to really ramp up local support of this is your local players. This is probably the best chance for Manchester to use that domestic connection and local connection they have with their players and use the ones that are, born and raised and developed in Manchester. Like, this is your guys who have started here, grown here, are now representing on the biggest stage in the UK. And this is, let's be honest, attendance at this final is going to be bigger than any game there's going to be at Manchester's home venue this year.
Yep.
This is a chance to reach out to a market that probably is relatively untouched compared to what they're going to get on a standard game day at the Performance Centre. It's huge. And if it has any sort of impact, and if it has a translation across to Manchester, like, realistically, the goal behind the scenes, not on the court. On the court, obviously, they want to win. But that's always going to be the case. But if you're thinking from a long-term standpoint, for you want to get people involved in Manchester area, in my mind, as long as they're competitive with London and it's a good game where they're actually pretty close and they show they can compete at that level, that alone could market Manchester for the rest of the season. Or we could upset these guys next time. We can go and do things in European competition. We could be a threat in the playoffs. That's a marketing point in itself, just by getting to this final and doing well in it.
Yeah, or it's just a really good showcase of their product, against a really high caliber team, obviously for the future to build on that audience base. So I really hope it's a competitive game and they kind of have a good game there. So
right, they've beat London once already. Doesn't mean they can't do it again.
Absolutely. Let's look at how London got to the final. They obviously took on the Cheshire Phoenix. At home, they had, a 17-point lead heading into the second leg, but it was the Phoenix who edged it second leg. Mitch, you enjoyed both those games, and the comeback certainly was on at one point for Cheshire.
Yeah, my heart was in my throat for that second leg. I was panicking. I was like, oh my God, this is actually going to happen, because there was a stat that was brought up by Dan Rutledge on the comms that any team that's been 17-point deficit after the first leg is 50-0. That the team that won the first leg by that much goes through.
Wow!
And Cheshire almost beat the odds and became that first team to make that 50-1, which would have been incredible to see, because they almost did it. And then it was just like, it's interesting. That's 2 weekends in a row now where you've seen a team take 2 timeouts in the first quarter of the second half, because that was done by Manchester, actually, funnily enough. They took 2 timeouts in the same quarter. London did the same thing, and after that turn, I think it was like a 6-minute spell between the end of the third and start of the fourth, where Cheshire didn't score, or they scored like 4 points total. Like, it was awesome to see. Like, that's just a level that they stepped up and has got the job done, but Cheshire gave them a hell of a fight to get there.
They had the dogs in them, man. The Cheshire kind of they fought so hard in that second game. It obviously showed in the foul count, with Cheshire for like almost fouling out like 4 of their players, which is mental. But yeah, look at the foul count, Mitch. But
oh no, I know.
But yeah, like guys like the Quincy really kind of, obviously he struggled with fouls, but defensively I thought kind of his doggedness and his hands. His hands are insane. Just he was everywhere in that first half. Just making, because what Cheshire were doing was if anyone like Dean Williams were in the post, they were immediately like triple teaming them. they were massively collapsing the paint and kind of forcing London to beat it from the outside, and it really kind of worked, with their help and their rotations defensively kind of were really good. So in that first half, they really kind of stymied London, and just Pat Robinson offensively just did his thing. He just went to work. Like, obviously we know how good he is one-on-one against anyone, and like as a foul grifter, I like to say it. Like he got a crazy amount of fouls, free throws that game too, and yeah, just a lot of their guys stepped up. Guys like Policelli, he kind of, I feel like his field goal percentage wasn't that great, but having that like comparative size against London, I feel like is a big thing, because they are so physical comparatively against our league, or like functional size wise, like against our league, so having that level of size with a guy like Policelli, and having lineups with Policelli, Diggins and Skylar, kind of gives you like a Euro Cup level of size, practically speaking. So it allows you to line up against them, if that kind of makes sense. So yeah, it was just a really massive fight, and then London just turned the tap off, and then Cheshire couldn't score.
I mean, look at Policelli. For field goal wise, over the 2 games, he was 6 for 22. So didn't shoot the ball very well, but he did grab 19 rebounds across both games.
Yeah,
10
that's
in one,
something.
9 in the other. Like, that's a positive contribution in itself. He's grabbing those rebounds for that team.
Absolutely.
But the ball wasn't
offensive
involved.
rebounds too.
Yeah,
Second
but
game.
I think the style of player Cheshire are playing, because I think there was a couple of fans mentioned on the Discord actually the intensity and the energy Cheshire came out the gates with in that second leg. Like, they knew they had to come out swinging to start with, and they did.
Yeah, they punched lines in the mouth. Like,
I think
just
when
instantly.
I listened to Sabonis's post-game kind of press conference or interview, whatever you want to call it, and they were obviously saying about how happy the question was, are you happy with 17-point lead? And he was like, I'll be happy with a 17-point win if we get there on Sunday. Like, he kind of was expecting Cheshire to make that change. He knew that they'd come out fighting, putting up threes and whatnot. So London almost, from that kind of those comments, knew what to expect. You kind of know what Cheshire are going to give in terms of energy and effort. Is that testament to London that they were able to, deal with that storm and just kind of seen that game through, how you holding on to that? I think finished off winning the tie by, what was it, 9? Do you know what I mean? Like, they were able to took that pressure, they absorbed it, they used their roster really well, as you'd expect, because you knew that you're going to get that home bounce from Cheshire.
I mean, I hate talking about intangibles, but I think it's a really big character win because of how physical Cheshire played that second game. Like, they were just everywhere, putting their whole heart and soul into that game. And yeah, the Lions just snuffed them out, basically. So
I think, I mean, for me, it's like, think of it, I will say like a pattern with London. You think about how they've been playing Euro Cup and had the 3 back-to-back 1-point losses.
Yeah.
And then you have the final where Newcastle went on a run late and made it a lot closer than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like, they're making a habit now of letting teams get a little bit too close for comfort sometimes, and they got punished at a higher level in Euro Cup for that. I think the challenge was they probably weathered that against probably the most high intensity, like, just charge at your team of Cheshire. Like, the fact they've done that against them is credit to them. But they have to be thinking, we can't allow that to happen. We need to find a way to weather that storm earlier and start not allowing those comebacks to come, because that shows a lack of focus when they're up big. That, I guess, a team like Manchester in the final, that's going to cost them, because they will just run at you again.
When I look at the Cheshire Phoenix, you always think, okay, we've talked a lot about Pat Robinson. We all know what LaQuincy can do. We've talked about Policelli was someone we were quite looking forward to seeing this league, Diggins as well. But seeing recent games, when I think of a guy who, if they need a bucket or they need a stop, I think Jackson Brenchley is one of these guys that just goes...
I knew you were going to say that.
Like, why? But tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. Not
Not
at
wrong.
all. He was incredible that second game.
Yeah.
He was great that second game. But he's just, it's a little bit of the like Will Yoakum, kind of like an odd comparison, but he's just this superb kind of off-ball player that he can just kind of fit into any lineup and he'll just get buckets without having to have the ball, really. You know, and if the ball kind of ends up with him like late shot clock, he's very dangerous, like slashing toward the basket. You know, so he's this type of signing that other teams I feel don't really kind of make. You know, it's him and the Will Yoakum signing. They're kind of like these kind of role players that I feel like would add to any team. So yeah, big up Jackson Brentford.
Big up Jackson Brentford. When we look at the other side, London announced obviously the return of Joel Scott. Joel Scott was probably, before his injury, almost 3-4 months ago, definitely the standout player in that London team, definitely the standout player in the league. He came back and played off the bench in both these games. What kind of impact do we see him having the rest of the season? Is he the one that, had he been available in a number for London in those kind of big late Euro Cup games, they probably get them across the line? Like, they've had to lean a lot into like Ethan Price. They've had to lean a lot into Dean Williams. Had they had that Joel Scott, could London be a different beast than what we've been seeing?
I think it's probably another arrow in the quiver for Euro Cup. Probably would have been that
Arrow
little
in the quiver. What a sentence that is alone. Sorry, continue.
I think he probably would have been the difference maker for that in terms of Euro Cup, potentially, to make those 1 point losses become 1 or 2 point wins potentially down the line. But we touched on it before, like the impact that Dean Williams having a really good season, both domestic and international. Like he stepped up massively with Joel not being in. Ethan Price has had a couple of really impressive games as well for London.
Oh, and also Dean Williams has been killer just all season. So
yeah. I mean, when you look at the two legs that Joel's played, he's basically had almost near identical stat lines across both games. We had 14 minutes, 7 points apiece. Like he's giving you a little bit off the bench, and they're working him back in. He's going to take a bit of time. If he gets back to the Joel Scott that we saw start of the season, then watch out everybody else. If that happens or not by the end of the season, I think we'll have to wait and see. But it's just another threat to add to their roster of just problems for anyone to deal with. If he comes back even 70% of the player he was, he's going to be a tough player to stop.
Because he was averaging through the first 9 league games of the season, 17 points a game. Yeah. Early shout by everyone for MVP. He's obviously going to, I mean, can he get himself back in MVP discussion? I think he's missed too many games personally, like 50% of the season he's missed so far. Like he just has. We'll get into that one down the line, I suppose. But is he really going to? I think he's going to make a huge difference for London. He's going to shore them up. Dean Williams has been incredible. Dean Williams will probably and should be rightfully in your all SLB team for the season. When we do our awards, I'll probably be voting for him. He might even enter MVP, or probably should enter MVP discussions as well. But I just think Joel Scott coming back in just gives him so much.
He's just a player that no one in the SLB can guard. Just like long and short of it, he's just too physical. He's too big. And something I found crazy was, he just they were stopping him in the paint in that Cheshire game, because they were sending a crazy amount of players to help, but he's just stepped behind the arc and just cashed a contested free. So it's like, oh well. So yeah, it's just crazy to think about it, because he's the most dominant player in the paint. I will say that. A little bit of a stat line. He increases the most rim attempts when he's on court. He increases more rim attempts than any other player when he's on court for his team when he's playing. So that's a stat line.
There's a stat attack.
I got that out somehow, but yeah, it's just crazy. So
hey, before we look in towards that kind of final matchup, I think this discussion gets talked about all the time when it comes to British basketball, and it's the story of aggregate scoring. Obviously, London won game 1, Cheshire won game 2. Are we should that go to a third game decider? Are we happy with aggregate? Because we know that's what the competition is. It made it a bit of an excitement for the weekend, but you did think maybe, you know what, Friday after did anyone after Friday think Cheshire had a chance? Do you know what I mean? Like, it felt like the Friday games, you kind of thought, oh, is Sunday. Whereas, do you know what I mean? Like, there's pros and cons on every side, but I'd be really curious to hear you guys' views on the aggregate scoreline being used. It's okay because it's in a one-off competition.
You go first, Louis.
Okay, I'm obviously serious. I'm obviously a series guy. I want like best of 3. I don't really. I think it's a more tactical kind of game. You can stretch it out over 3 games rather than 2, and you don't have to care about kind of the aggregate and doing maths in your head. That I think is kind of like a weak narrative tool in terms of. I just don't like it, to be frank. Best of 3. Like, we would have had a third Cheshire-London game in that series. I think that would have been really cool.
Is this then when we look at where British basketball is all the time, I suppose, and think, well, neither of those two teams, for example, own their facility. So a game 3 would require
the practicality of it.
Yeah, like, is this then a dormant discussion? But if all things were what they were, I would have loved to just seen another matchup, because both Cheshire played so well on Sunday to win that game that they potentially, did they deserve another chance, or would you would have just seen London play that game 2 differently, starting 0-0? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I always just I get myself twisted and turned when I think about this debate. Mitch, what do you think?
See, I don't mind aggregate score. I don't have that. I know. I gotta be a contrarian. I know. I don't mind it. Like, if it's good enough for FIBA competitions like the Europe Cup, why is it such a big deal? Like, they use it and it's effective in their knockout stages. And I mean, they've made a very valid point there. Like, do we actually have the availability within the venues to have a third date pending just in case we need it? Do we have that flexibility right now? Are venues that aren't owned by the clubs going to be willing to hold a date aside just in case? Probably not.
And also, attendances will probably be very bad.
Yeah,
well, you're going to have what? Like, realistically, if there was a third game that, if you think about hypothetically for that, if there was a third game between London and Cheshire, it's probably going to be landing. Probably played, if they played Friday, Sunday, it's probably played our Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week. So you're playing a midweek game that you're going to have to try and find availability for and get people buying tickets within a day's notice, a 2 days notice maybe at most. Like, it's going to be tough to get anybody, a lot of people going to
Mitch just talks sense, doesn't he? Like, aggregate all the way, let's go.
I think for the time being, what we have, aggregate works better. I don't actually mind it, because I think it puts a bit of pressure on, because the amount of times that we've seen in the playoffs or trophy where these turnarounds have happened, like, one team can lose one leg, and to be honest, if any team was going to come back from 17 down, it would be Cheshire. With how they play and the dynamic style of play they have. You have that against like a Newcastle, for example, where they're down by 17-18. Yeah, they're probably going to struggle to get that score result back. But Cheshire against London is just such a chaotic matchup that anything could happen. So I wasn't, like, odds were against Cheshire to do it, but we've seen how much Cheshire's home crowd and being at home affects that team. You couldn't have run off, and they got really damn close. And they would have got over 3 legs.
Very true. Very true. So it's London and Manchester matchup. We've said about the importance for Manchester getting to that final, but we've also heard now that obviously London won the trophy final, that chat about going for the quadruple and their kind of jet wash or Newcastle's streak, that, you know, and that kind of thing. And you know what? I think that's just good storytelling. I think that's good storytelling. You've obviously got the final Manchester, London on a mission now. Can they be the next men's team to sweep all the trophies? But when we look at this final matchup, is there anything instantly that stands out between London and Manchester? Is it one of these ones where right now, 2 top teams, both teams who have done a good job at representing the country in Europe, you look at both teams have a good British kind of flavour across their rosters, and you probably go, you know what, for a final in Manchester, that's kind of important as well. Louis, what's your thoughts on this? Our initial thoughts. We'll do a full final preview show in the week leading up to it. But what's your kind of first kind of early thoughts for this final? Oh, Louis has no sound. Mitch, what's your views on the final early on?
Louis gone. We lost him. I think for me, I look at it and think Manchester for me is like this final is a profile of the impact British players can have at a high level.
Yeah.
This is two teams that have a good strong British contingent that are actually contributing at a European level. So it's a chance to really market that and show this is what Brits can do at the highest possible level. And it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it.
And is it one of these ones when you look at different players throughout the rosters, we're talking about big time British players. Dean Williams, I'm so impressed with Dean Williams this season, even the way he speaks in the media and when he does press conferences and interviews, like he just comes across as an absolute quality guy and understands playing basketball in the UK. You look at Kym Cleary kind of being on the other side of that. Like those are the two kind of guys I instantly want to see play on the floor in this final and have an absolute brilliant games because they're homegrown guys. Do you know what I mean? Is that where we're at when it comes to this final?
That's going to be a fun matchup in itself. I'm looking forward to that one. Cleary versus Williams will be fascinating to see. I think Sorry.
No, on you go. You keep going. You keep going.
I think one player I'm interested in seeing, because they've almost kind of had to step up more because Joel Scott's not been around so much, is Aaron Rye. He had a really big turnout in both games for London against Cheshire. And he's kind of stepping into that role to kind of cover and do a little bit of the things that Joel Scott wasn't available to do. So I'm curious to see if that continues and if he gets targeted by Manchester and what they're kind of looking at in terms of that front. Because he's an MVP of the league before. We know what he does. He's been coming off the bench for London for a lot of the season, but he's been starting more recently and doing really good things for that again. So is Joel Scott going to have to fight for his starting spot again for Aaron if he keeps this up? And who's going to be that matchup in the final is going to be really interesting to see.
Look, I look at that final, I think, who am I, if I'm coaching, which doesn't mean much, and I'm trying to nullify the Joel Scott effect, are you putting someone like a Tim Adikasi against him? Are you probably putting like a Zach Irvin against him? Louis, do you want to check if your sound's working?
Is it working?
Yes,
yeah.
Louis back. But Louis, are you in agreement of any of those things, or people have suggested that you put on Joel Scott to potentially nullify him in a final?
Well, that's the thing. They've got a lot of physical bodies. If you've got a guy like Kane Henry,
it's going to be incredible.
I feel like they kind of match up really well with London because they do have. I mean, they literally have Gabe Osaboyan, who's literally who's an incredible post defender in a sense. So. Yeah, they've got loads of big bodies that can match up physically, and then also on the other side, obviously they have guys like Max Jones and Jordan Johnson who can literally just put up points in a second. So it depends on the level of engagement and the level of preparation. In the last London game, obviously Manchester were very prepared and they actually worked hard for a game, and it panned out. In single games where Manchester really are clearly locked in, they look exceptionally dangerous because they do have such a deep pool of talent. They have some of the best scorers in the league, hands down, and then paired with some of the best defensively, individual defenders, we have. So I feel like it's going to be a very tough game. Obviously, London play a very aggressive style of play, and I feel like a guard like Jordan Johnson, that's a guy that's really well suited for that, and a guard like PJ Smith, who two guards that are very good behind the arc, is something that's I feel like is a big plus, So yeah, and the thing I was going to say was this statistically. London give up a very high volume of threes. They also have one of the lowest 3-point percentages because they defend the perimeter so well. But if you have, guys like Max Jones, John Johnson, PJ Smith, who can get to their shot really easily from behind the arc, that's a point of, that's a plus point that you can kind of exploit. So, or try to at the very least. So
absolutely should be a quality matchup. We'll preview in more depth in the week leading up to. We're obviously a couple weeks away from that. 4, I think, when you add in international breaks, a couple weekends of SLB fixtures as well. So should be a brilliant game. Get along to that if you can at the AO Arena in Manchester. Should be a good one. All right, let's look at some other league chat. I was having a look at the standings. Obviously, no championship games this week. And obviously, off the back of Gladiators beating Manchester last weekend, the league standings is really interesting. Should Newcastle, obviously sitting in 8th place, 6th and 13, which is crazy to say, but yeah, should they be more wary of what's behind them rather than looking forward? Like, when you look at it, they've played the same amount of games as Manchester and Surrey. They're 4 games back in them. They're 3 games back in Leicester, but played 2 more games. Leicester, if they win their games to put them on the same amount as other teams, could go 11 and 8, which would move them up to 3rd in the table from 7th. That's how crazy and close the league standings are this season. But yeah, should Newcastle now be more wary of what's behind them? Or have they got enough to say, you know what, we've not got the 8th spot locked down, but we can still challenge to move up the table?
Okay, I guess I'm going on this one then.
no, I need to get some stats up. Sorry.
Oh, you're pulling the stats up. That's your excuse. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that you look at the gaps that we have between Newcastle and above and below them, it's an ask to catch up with Leicester. So the question I would be asking off the back of that is, do you think Gladiators have it in them to grab more wins to contest Newcastle? Or are they both just going to lose the vast majority of their games for the rest of the year? And Manchester and Newcastle keep that gap steady.
I ask the questions of you guys. You don't then ask. You don't ask a question you don't answer the question by asking a question.
Sorry, I shouldn't ask the Gladiators guys. The Gladiators are going to win, because obviously everyone's going to say. I think they should be more worried right now about maintaining the 8th spot. I think the gap between them and Leicester is big enough that it's going to be tough to come back unless you go on a run late season. And Caledonia have picked up a win recently, and if they keep some forward momentum going, they could be a sneaky slip into the 8th spot if Newcastle aren't ready.
But this is the thing, when you look at the league stat, or the last 5 games, or even just the last 4 domestic games for Newcastle, going back to the 11th of January, they lost to the Phoenix by 3. They lost to the Flyers by 2. They lost to Manchester by 4. They lost to Leicester by 2. That's nothing. Like, we could easily, but you need to win the games there in front of you. Like, I should have added up as it goes, 6, 8. They've lost 4 games by a combined 11 points.
Right.
Their last 4 games by 11 points.
Okay. And then let's look at Newcastle's next 5 games.
Yeah, they've got
Manchester away, Surrey at home, Cheshire at home, Bristol away, Gladiators at home.
You look at it's a very, I think, almost a season-defining doubleheader weekend for them.
I think it's got very much the impact to potentially be. If they lose both of those games, Gladiators have to try and pick up a win somewhere. Like, it just depends which team you're getting, because you've got the team that just made the final and the team that's lost the semis to make the final in the same weekend.
Like, they were such a good team through. Like, I feel like Newcastle are almost just the nearly team this year, and we maybe, like we've talked in previous years of teams doing a Surrey, for example. Newcastle have been in these games, and even with that London game, if I remember correctly, they were in that game up through the first quarter at least, if I remember correctly. They obviously lost to London in the trophy final, but are they just a really frustrating team on the eye, Louis?
Yeah, they are, because they're so talented. They have so many talented players. They have players direct from Pro B France in their PG and
Hammond.
No, that's BBL.
Hammond played in Germany.
Hammond. Okay, so that's another guy. But basically, they have a lot of talent. Maceo Jack. Yeah. Basically, they have a lot of talent. They shouldn't be losing this many games, to be frank. They are kind of like a paradox. But the stats that I was looking at to get to it, I was being truthful. Adjusted net rating, adjusted for strength of schedule. Using a lot of maths. They are okay. So they are on minus 2.2 adjusted net rating. Leicester Riders are on minus 1.6. So practically speaking, even though Leicester Riders across Cup, Trophy, and League are like 10 and 9, and Newcastle are 8 and 16. Practically speaking, in terms of just adjusted for strength of schedule, they should be kind of equal. And then kind of you look at the Gladiators and they're minus 10.8. So
no, that wasn't the question.
So they're really bad. But yeah, Newcastle are really frustrating, and that kind of adjusted net rating kind of shows that level of frustration because, as you say, they've been in a lot of close games and kind of chucked it away. So yeah,
they've obviously had a lot of roster changes compared to maybe some teams. Obviously, Josh Ward-Hibbert's been a massive miss. They'll probably now hope that with obviously the weekend off there, he could be a big feature for them in closing any gap. We know he's a born winner. You look at the players they started the season with in terms of obviously Malcolm Smith, Brett Reed, Marco Anthony, to name but three who started the season. We obviously saw Caleb Huffman in the preseason. When you look at, I talk about the needle moving in terms of their talent level. There's no doubt to say that their talent level needle moved massively up with the changes they've made to the roster. They've just not got the W's. Is that a fair comment to make?
Yes.
Yeah. Very close games across the board. I'm looking at Leicester's next 5 out of curiosity to see what the comparison is, and they play quite a few of the same teams over the next 5 games.
Of course there are. There's only 9 teams in the league.
But what I mean is the next 5 games are London away, Sheffield home, Surrey away, Cheshire home, Caledonia away. So 3 of the same 5 teams are playing the next 5 games.
Yeah.
So,
and you look at them on the other side, obviously, they got that win against Newcastle by 2 points. They did lose to Surrey by 9. They beat the Flyers by 5. They beat Manchester by 7. And they beat Bristol at the tail end of the year or last year by 12. So they're able to, okay, maybe not as close a games as Newcastle, but a good number of them are single-figure wins. Leicester are able to pick up those wins. Would you say there's they've got Battle, Carey, Mark Loving, who I almost sometimes forget he's even there, Travis Evie, I think Spencer Johnson's had a tremendous second season just because he just does a job so well. Is there, I don't know if this is a guided question or what, so I'd be curious to hear your view. When we look at the talent level of both those teams, is that maybe just testament to the league we've got this season? When, if you take it as the current league position both these teams are in, the 5 names I just said for Leicester compared to the Eagles team, Jack, Hammond, we've said Ward-Hibbert, their guard lineup, there's Dion Hammond as well. Okafor maybe hasn't been the same player since injury. But the talent level for both those teams are so high. Louis, go. You picked your mic, got higher.
Of course. Categorically, I'd say that if you smack that Leicester team in 23-24 BBL, I think that Leicester team's come in second, man. Just as it is right now, and that Newcastle team is not going to be far off second. I will say that right now. I think that's very testament to the progression because we would not be able to sign these players. There's no way in hell. Why the hell is Mark Loving coming back? To name one example. So
loves Leicester.
He loves Leicester. So, but yeah, it's just testament, and it shows you how competitive this league is. That Newcastle, a team with 3 Pro B France players and a German BBL player, is sitting 8th right now, and we're talking about whether they could even slip to 9th. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's kind of mad to say. So, yeah.
That was kind of my point as well. Like, this is the two teams we're talking about are sitting at the bottom end of the table, and we're talking about the quality of player in the league. This is the bottom end. Like, the standard has clearly risen across the league that like this is what's the minimum standard of competing in the league is this level now.
I mean, 2 seasons ago, Surrey was signing guys like Charleston Dobbs, to name one example. So, what, you didn't like that name drop?
Superb, good going.
It's a deep cut. It's a deep
I'm
cut.
sorry, Charleston Dobbs, but but yeah, I if we just look at the difference in signings from like teams like Plymouth, for example, Plymouth signed an NAIA guy, who promptly got cut, but you know, it's just it's just night and day. So.
It's just not just like further like reinforcing what was talked about in the preseason of having higher standards of teams at the top end demands everyone else fights the same way too. Everyone else is building a better caliber because the ceiling's that much higher to compete. These other teams are bringing a higher standard of player in to be at that level.
Absolutely. When we look ahead to, like, when you look at upcoming fixtures, obviously it's a midweek game, so that game may have already happened by the time you listen to this podcast, and we could be saying how sitting here after you could be listening to this, and we're saying this about Newcastle and they've just beaten Manchester. So if that is the case, we'll talk about it next week. But obviously, loads of games coming up. Midweek game, Manchester versus Newcastle. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 game slate this weekend. So much basketball. When you guys look ahead, I don't know if you guys have got the fixtures up in front of you. Is there a more standout game, or is there a standout game for any you guys? Let's pick one each for you, which you think could be really crucial for the season ahead. I'll happily go first to let you guys have a thought. We're talking about, you've obviously got maybe on the Sunday, you've got the cup preview, I suppose, in Manchester versus London. That's a huge game. But for me, I'm really curious to see how, I'll even just focus on one team. How do Surrey finish this weekend? They play away on the road to Newcastle, and they're all on the road to Cheshire as well. Big weekend. Who's available for them? Could they go 0-2? Do they go split the weekend? Could they win them both? That'd be huge for their season. But that'll really kind of figure out where they rank this season on the road. Louis, you were nodding there. Go for it.
I agree. That's all I was going to say.
Right.
But obviously it's going to be big whether Michael Graham and Ron Polite is back and healthy, basically. And yeah, like obviously we've been massive on Surrey last month, and whether they can basically keep that up against Cheshire. That's going to be a very tough game. You know, obviously trying to keep up with them. And last time they kind of played Tim Nwankwo kind of off the floor. So that's going to be a big tell. So I didn't really add anything there, sorry.
No, well done. Hey, Mitch, your turn. What's your standout game or team to watch for the weekend?
So I've got a team to watch, but it's not Surrey. For me, it's Sheffield. Like, they play away in Caledonia on the Friday, and then they're playing at home to Bristol on the Sunday. But in their mind, there should be 2 games they should be winning. But we've seen how they can be a little bit inconsistent as of late. Deloach obviously isn't there, and we haven't had an announcement of a new signing yet. That may have changed by the time you listen to this, but we don't know for sure. But there's 2 games that are kind of vital for them showing an intent to compete in the top end of the bracket.
Yeah,
like they dropped that game to Caledonia. That was a massive loss for them away from home, and it's big for Caledonia's push for the playoffs. If they lose to Bristol, that's another team in the middle of the table that they're losing an advantage over, especially in a home game. So, yeah, they're kind of my team to watch this weekend.
Love that. Right. If you can, there's so much British basketball to watch this week. Get involved in the conversation. Thank you for listening. My thanks to Louis and Mitch for being here this evening. My name's Grant as well. Give us a follow across our social media channels. Follow the boys as well. They do so much good posting across. Louis as well with his videos on Instagram, and I'm guessing TikTok as well, but I'm too old for TikTok. So we'll be back next week for another episode of SLB Show, and we'll see you then.